of people are more introverted, go toward the interior. Americans tend to be more extroverted and stay on the surface of things.
Well,
so we need them both.
And it strikes me that your book, Falling Upward, A Spirituality for Two Halves of Life, might want to play on some of those same themes, because in the book you're trying to say, look, second half of life, we should have learned, if I have this right, we should learn from the first part of our lives and develop a sense of who we are so that we can be people of a different kind of activity in the second half of life. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's a good direction with it. I think you got the heart of the matter. That if you want to speak psychologically, I say we're building our ego structure the first half of life, and then we somewhere say, well, what is this all for? Mm-hmm. In the book, I call it the container is the first half of life, and the second is the contents. What's it really for, this identity that I've created, this group that I belong to? And a lot of people, in my opinion, I wish it wasn't wrong, or wish it wasn't true, I should say, a lot of people stay in the first half of life. Just keep solidifying their own group identity or defending their own cultural or national identity.
Mm-hmm. And you have sort of a picture that halfway through life people would transition to the second half of life. Is that right? So assuming people live till they're in their 70s or 80s, something like that?
Well, don't tie up too much to chronology.
Good. I like that. That's what I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah. I've met young kids in cancer hospitals who are already spiritually in the second half of life, and I'm about to turn 69. I know people my age who are still in the first half of life. Mm-hmm. So, but all things being equal, the subtleties, the conflicts, the contradictions, the paradoxes you meet in your 40s and 50s should, by your 60s, be preparing you for second half of life wisdom.
Yeah, and there's this cultural meme that 40 is the new 20, which is something that those of us in our 40s like to argue for. I don't think 20-year-olds argue for that, but people in their 40s do. And you want to critique that a bit to say, look, sure we should be forever young, but let's not be forever sort of adolescent about our development.
Yeah, there's many indicators, I think, by even objective criteria, that we tend to be a first half of life culture.
That's right.
We tend to idealize first half of life values of good looks, success, money, power. Those are all fine things. But when you make them an end in themselves, you don't tend to create wise people, or what I call elders. I like to say we have a lot of elderly people, but not a lot of elders in our
that's
culture.
Interesting. Now, Carla, who's co-hosting here today with me, and we're both people born in the latter part of the 1960s, and I remember hearing from people a generation older than me that there was this narrative at the end of the 1960s and the early 1970s from what we would now call baby boomers saying, never trust anyone over 30.
That was my generation.
That's right.
We said that.
Yeah, and do you think that has created that kind of mentality in some formative years has created a unique experience for the largest generation in North American history to have been shaped in a don't trust age as sort of a cultural worldview? Like, is it peculiar in the last 30 or 40 years from what you've sensed in other cultures and what goes on in different traditions around the world?
Well, in all fairness, maybe America leads the pack, but most of Western civilization is in the same boat. Yeah. This idealization of success, power, money, climbing. We don't tend to be producing wisdom cultures anymore. So it's not just us.
Yeah, I see.
Because our media form the world now. So you can go to the jungles of Cambodia and meet people who think like Americans. Sad to say.
So, Richard, how do we push back against that? I mean, those of us who are kind of thinking those second life things, we got one set of questions for us, right? But then for those, like I work with college students, for example. So how do we kind of counter that idealization of that first half of life?
Well, it's not easy because there is something so naturally attractive about it.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love the beauty of youth? Who doesn't love success? So wisdom teaching is almost always counterintuitive. Now, why God created the world that way, I don't know. But, that's why hermits and monks and gurus go off to caves in the common mythology.
Sure.
Because the normal mainline culture can't hear it. So they have to go to the edge and to the side. Now, you're asking the much more practical question, well, does it need to stay there on the side, or can it be brought back to the center? I think that's what you see in Jesus, who goes to the desert, who goes out into the wilderness, but then comes back into the city, bringing that wisdom. But you do see the pendulum swing there, or the recycling, that you need to detach from business as usual in some form, or you get culturally trapped inside of it. And our culture is so attractive by reason of sound and music and media, and it's triply hard not to be seduced by it.
And I find even the title of your book is an interesting concept, and I want to ask you a little bit about why you phrased it this way, or maybe in partnership with the publisher. Falling upward. That's supposed to be a play on falling down in the latter part of life. Is that right? Like I've fallen and I can't get up, kind of picture.
When I came up with the title, I felt certain that the publisher would come back and say, "Oh, there's 5 other books." Well, there actually were not. Because for me, it's the heart of not just the teaching of Jesus, but if you really look at the world religions, they're all talking about how do you transform death, failure, suffering, a defeat. They're all saying it just in a different vocabulary, because that's the heart of the message. But for me, the only other book was the Shel Silverstein children's book, Falling Upwards, with an S on the end. But that there were no other books revealing this counterintuitive but universal wisdom was surprising to me and a bit disappointing, because I thought, well, doesn't everybody know this? We Christians call it the death and resurrection cycle.
Yeah.
But we worship it in Jesus instead of living it ourselves.
And so in that you're trying to ask people to reconsider even pain and failure and struggle as a part of where things ought to go. Like that ought to be a part of your preparation for, and not lament it. You have this little bit in the book where you encourage people to not lament their poor parenting or loss of jobs or failed relationships or physical struggles or gender issues or whatever, and to say, look, that's your preparation point for something in the future, and that's is that right?
You got it. Those blaming, accusing, self-pity, those are all a waste of time, spiritually speaking. If it happened, the only spiritual question is, okay, what can I learn from this? Now, admittedly, it takes all of us some time to get to that mature question.
Yeah.
But that is the question. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I appreciate about what you're saying, too, though, is not just kind of honoring what happens in the second half of life, but acknowledging that there's a need for that process in the first half of life. I think sometimes we look back, and those of us who are kind of moving into our 40s here, we can look back on those years and be very judgmental, not just about ourselves, but about the generation currently living there, and looking at them and thinking about how shallow they are and how ridiculous they are. And
Isn't that true? That's so true.
So I think you offer us a way of extending some grace to the generations that are following us, to say the things that you're processing right now and the things that are important to you for a reason. The thing you're suggesting is don't get stuck there as you move through life, but you have to build those pieces of your life.
Richard, can you hold your response to that till we have to have people sell some products to take care of the bills around the place, which is a good thing we do as well. So hang tight. Father Richard Rohr, his book is called Falling Upward. You can go onto the Doug Pagitt Radio page on Facebook and click on it and order it right now if you're up for reading. We'll be back here on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, and over at DougPagittRadio.com after the break.